getting our water ready. Bringing it up to 165. We've already added our water adjustments, gypsum, calcium chloride, Epsom salt, and lactic acid to make sure that our minerals and our pH is correct. So we're getting close. We're gonna pour our water in here, and that'll allow us to hold the temperature at a constant 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And this false bottom here at the bottom acts as a strainer, so later when we empty this, that the liquid can come out while keeping the grains separate. And here's the grains we're going to be using today. We've got 16 pounds of 2-row pale barley. You can see it's barley that's been crushed. And then we also are going to use 1 pound of Munich malt, which will give it flavor and some coloring. This is going to be a double IPA, or an Imperial IPA. So now we've got 7 gallons of 165 degree water. We're going to go ahead and start adding our barley, and we'll mix it up. Can't do this with one hand, so I'll pause. Okay. So we've mixed all of our grains, and we're going to put the lid on and let this sit for an hour. And when we come back, all the starches from the grains are going to be converted into sugars, so we're going to have a very sweet liquid. But the temperature should be now about 150 degrees. I'll measure it in a second. That's because the grains obviously are cooler and bring down the temperature of the water. Okay, so we've let the grains cook now for an hour, and we're going to drain off all the liquid. So we're collecting all this very sweet sugar water. So we'll get about, I think, 3.5 gallons of that. And then once that drains, I've added another 3 gallons of water. We'll add that back to the grains to rinse them off and get the last sugars off, and we'll collect a total of about 6.5 gallons. And we'll boil that. Okay, as you can see, all the grains are drained, and I've collected 7 gallons here in the boil kettle, and I'm going to boil this for 90 minutes. Here to a boil, and we have our hops all laid out. Hops are these little flowers that are ground up into pellets. And so I've got them separated out. I'm going to throw in these little piles every 5 minutes to give the flavor and bitterness. So I'll go ahead and start. Okay, so I've finished boiling for 90 minutes and adding my hops. So now I'm cooling this down to a room temperature. So I've got the pot out here on the porch, and in here I have a chiller. It's a copper tube that's just running cold water through the inside and cooling it down. I want to cool it down quickly. I actually have a pump set up inside a cooler that I've filled with ice water. So the pump is sucking in water here, going through the hose, through the coil, and then coming back into the cooler. So I use less water this way. So I'm going to let this cool for probably 15 minutes it'll take to get it down to a temperature where I can add the yeast. Okay, so I've cooled it down to about 65 degrees and put it into this fermenting jug. And now I've got an oxygen tank set up here, and I'm going to oxygenate the beer. It's not quite beer yet because it's not fermented. This is just blowing bubbles into the beer and giving the yeast oxygen that it needs. Gotta be careful so I don't make a mess out the top. Don't have to add too much. I'm actually about done. Okay, so now I'm going to pour this yeast in to start the fermentation. Oh, this is going to be full. And fermentation has started. So you can see the yeast are now eating all the sugars and making alcohol, and as a byproduct they're putting out CO2. So I've got this airlock on to keep air from getting in, but it allows the CO2 to escape. And in fact, I've got another little blow-off tube here. This also is going into a bottle of water, just because this carboy is so full that it probably will overflow. In fact, I actually emptied and cleaned this out this morning because it was already full of foam. So we're going to let this ferment for a couple of days and then transfer it to another container to let it settle out for another week or so.